Welcome back to the West London Witch. This episode includes a story of suicide and may not be suitable for everyone. Listener discretion is strongly advised. Roberta Beacham loved a Monday. As the owner of the Beacham Theatre, Mondays were the only day she got the theatre all to herself. Yes, of course, Friday night premieres were exciting and Sunday matinees were a delight. But on a Monday, Roberta could roam through the empty lobby, wander the quiet dressing rooms, and stand silently center stage. If she was really quiet, tremendously focused, she could almost hear him, almost feel him next to her. The theater had been the dream of Roberta's husband, Braxton. He poured his love, creativity, energy, and fortune into building this magical space, a palace where music, dance, drama, and movies moved audiences to tears, laughter, joy, and let them step into new realities and different worlds. However, since Braxton's death, Roberta herself had been chasing a new world to escape into. She loved seeing her husband's dream come to life. She was thrilled to see the stage awash with lights, glitter, song, and dance, and she truly appreciated all of the talent, staff, and patrons who made the Beacham Theatre so special, so magnificent, and so profitable. But no matter how sold out the theater was, or how many dancers cluttered around the dressing room mirrors, Roberta never felt more alone than when the theater was full. But on a Monday, when the theater went dark, Roberta could come and be in the space she dreamed about with her Braxton. As she walked through the vacant halls, she tidied up stray props, organized programs, straightened the furniture, and caught Braxton up on the week's events. This ritual hurt her heart terribly, but it was her only connection to her lost love. But this Monday was different. As Roberta stood center stage, tears threatening to break loose, she called out to Braxton. "Why would you leave me? We were supposed to do this together. This was our dream, my darling. I don't want it if it's not with you." The tears were freely flowing now, and Roberta dropped to her knees, much like Ophelia, Juliet, or Cleopatra, consumed by her grief, loss, and incurable heartache. As she wept, crumpled on the unlit stage, she begged, pleaded, and bartered with God to be with her Braxton once more. As though her prayers had been heard, Roberta began to feel a warmth envelop her. The stage lights began to glow a soft golden hue. She could feel him. She had had moments like this before, and she had chased them ever since. But this was strong, clear, and undeniable. Braxton was here. She rose, bathed in the amber stage lights, and dashed away her tears, scanning the audience for her husband. Her eyes passed wildly over empty seats, until clear as day, there he was, standing in the opera box attached to the upper balcony. He looked so healthy, so peaceful, so charming, and full of life. The breath caught in Roberta's chest as a sort of howl-come-laugh escaped her lips. He had come to her. They could be together again. Hitching up her skirt, Roberta ran backstage, up the spiral staircase to the balcony, and bolted to the opera box. But once inside, Braxton was gone. Frantically, she looked about. He was just here. He can't leave her now. Determined not to let fear consume her, Roberta cast her eyes across the house and stage. There he was, standing center stage, beckoning to her. His hand was outstretched, just like it had been, as she walked down the aisle on their wedding day. Although he was across the theater, she could hear him whisper in her ear, "Come to me, my love. Be with me forever." Roberta wasn't sure how the length of rope had found its way into her hand. Had she been carrying it all along? As though in a dream, she secured the rope around the banister of the opera box, slipped the loop around her neck, and free fell to her love awaiting below. In those last fleeting moments where life and death meet, Roberta thought of Shakespeare's Cleopatra and whispered to herself, "Give me my robe, put on my crown. I have immortal longings in me." We are back, and my cauldron is overflowing with new stories, chilling folklore, and secrets reserved especially for our West London Witch Coven. There has never been a better time to join the West London Witch Patreon, a space full of exclusive content, extra episodes, coven conversations, and not one, but 2 audiobooks read by me in video format. Joining Patreon is fun, easy, and affordable. For as little as £1, $1, €1 a month, you're not only unlocking our entire Patreon catalog, but your support is also keeping the cauldron bubbling and the magic burning. So join us today at patreon.com/The West London Witch. Hello and welcome to episode 97 of The West London Witch, a podcast where we share stories about those moments where we find ourselves very much not alone. I grew up in theater. My love for drama and dance eventually led me to earning a Bachelor's of Fine Arts degree. And now, when I'm not working on the West London Witch, I even teach performing arts. There truly is no place as special as the stage. And everyone knows that all good theaters are haunted. Today, our friend Ashlie, known on Instagram and YouTube as the Ghost Story Girl, is back to share with us a truly haunting tale set in a Florida theater. This story is full of twists, turns, scandal, intrigue, and murder. I'm Rebecca Strazina, and this is The West London Witch. Episode 97, The Beacham Theatre.
In the heart of Orlando is a historical gem largely ignored due to its status as a concert venue and nightclub. People go there to party, I went there to many concerts and nightclubs when I was going to UCF growing up. So downtown is just a really big party venue now. You'd look over it, it doesn't look like much of anything anymore. But originally, the site of this theater was Orlando's first jail.
Founded in 1884, the Orange County Jail was built to replace a former rudimentary jailhouse. After the original building made of logs was deemed inhumane, a new brick-and-mortar jailhouse was constructed. Like all houses of correction, the newly minted Orange County Jail saw much sadness and tragedies and was the site of many executions.
Many, many executions did take place there. Those are documented. I even found in the archives a photo from someone's scrapbook while visiting Florida, a scene where people are standing on wagons on the side of a fence looking over towards a white screen. It's basically a sheet being hung up, and it says, "A murderer being hung." And then it makes a comment about segregation. Basically, white people are on one side of the street and African-American people are on the other side of the street. So someone thought it necessary to document that and put it in their scrapbook. So kind of a crazy time here in Orlando. Anyway, that was the 1884 jail where executions took place.
However, come the turn of the century, a change was in the works. In 1916, local politician and businessman Braxton Beacham purchased the site, and in 1919, the old jail was razed in order to make space for the new glittering jewel of Orlando, the Beacham Theatre.
The Beacham Theatre opened in 1921, and that's what we still see standing today in downtown Orlando.
When the Beacham Theatre opened its doors, excited patrons flocked to the site. The theater is a simple 1920s brick and stucco design, built for premier entertainment. The interior was luxe and sophisticated. The ground floor housed the box offices, 2 storefronts, the lobby, the main auditorium, dressing rooms, staff restrooms, and the green rooms. The stage was thoughtfully designed to have the capacity to present high spectacle performances. There was a catwalk and even a full fly house above the stage. The second floor of the theater was comprised of offices, additional dressing rooms, the projection booth, and, most importantly, the balcony seating. However, despite the sparkly lights and jubilant performances, tragedy was looming. The theater was only open for 3 years before the visionary behind the building, Braxton Beacham, died.
Over time, a legend appeared regarding his wife, Roberta Beacham. Known as Birdie, people began to say that she hung herself from the rafters of the theater after her beloved husband died unexpectedly in 1924. People spread this legend that they would see a woman hanging from the rafters in the theater, and everyone just started calling her Mrs. Beacham. I thought it was strange. I wanted to know, is there any truth to this? If there is truth, why don't we go try to contact Mrs. Beacham? I want to know, what's going on at this theater.
Eager for answers, Ashlie reached out to the director of the theater and asked if she could conduct an investigation with the hopes of reaching Mrs. Beacham. The director enthusiastically agreed.
We had to plan a time where there wasn't an active concert going on, and also it's connected to a string of other clubs, so to have the noise going on during an investigation would kind of ruin things. So we had to really plan accordingly. I think like 6 months later, I finally got in there. So it took a lot of time and persistence. But finally, we go to the theater. I had done a walkthrough with the director where she showed me this area in the theater above. They call it the opera box, but it's really just kind of these square speakers that wouldn't have been there in the 1920s, obviously. But she showed me, this is the corner where Mrs. Beacham hung herself. Even on her death certificate, it says she died of suffocation. So, of course, in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm gonna check that out. I'm gonna look that up. Also, alleged activity was that bar glasses would fly off the bar on the second story. I had someone reach out to me actually and tell me that she was working up there late at night and she had the glasses just fly off the counter, a straight bar top, and she would address them out loud and say, "Okay, spirits, I see you. Not tonight. I gotta work." So the employees there seemed very used to strange activity happening. Another man had reached out to me and said when he was working in the scaffolding above the stage, he was there by himself one night and he turned around and he saw a man standing up there with him in a suit, like a weird, not of this time suit. And he yelled after him. He said, "Hey, what are you doing?" He thought it was one of his workers. It's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And the guy turned and started walking towards the end of the platform like he would just fall off. And he said the guy just totally vanished.
Another really common report at the Beacham is the uncanny feeling of being watched. Staff and guests have remarked that there is a palpable energy in the building that cannot go unnoticed. There are also stories of a presence being felt in the upstairs green dressing room. The space is now used as a green room for the bands. But let's come back to Roberta Beacham, Braxton's wife, the woman who allegedly hanged herself in the theater after the death of her husband.
So after that walkthrough with the director, I did some research into the family, the Beacham family. And I found that Braxton Beacham was from Georgia. He became Orlando's 18th mayor from 1906 to 1907. He was a businessman and family man. His wife was a Kentucky native, beloved for her kindness, her cheerful disposition, her love of animals. Her death certificate, I found, showed that she passed away from post-operative complications due to appendicitis at Orange General Hospital. Definitely different from the suffocation cause of death that people have been circulating. Okay, so we know that. She died in a hospital miles away of appendicitis, post-operative complications.
Roberta Beacham definitely did not hang herself in the theater. This is a myth. But it almost appears that, like all good urban legends, there are pockets of truth here. The site was a location of many deaths, executions, by hanging. That, combined with the sadness of the loss of this beloved and well-known lady, may have given birth to this twisted and sorrowful legend.
And as we know, like the opera box wouldn't have been there in the 1920s and things like that. So I would never discount people seeing things they saw, though. Seeing someone hanging from the rafters of the theater, seeing a gentleman disappear into thin air. The director of the theater also stated that outside her second-story offices, one day she was working and she turned her head and she saw this woman walk by her doorway in a dress. She said it looked like an old-timey dress. And then she just kind of walked and then disappeared into a wall. That's why she kept saying, "Oh, it's Mrs. Beacham," because it was a woman that she saw.
Regardless of who is haunting the theater, it does appear that someone is. But who?
So I was ready to go for the investigation. We showed up around 6:30 p.m., 7 p.m. I went with my wife, who immediately, she had never been to the theater before. She didn't know the history or anything like that. I had done the walkthroughs. I had done some brief blanket research on the theater itself. And as she gets into the space, I said, "Okay, where do you want to go?" And she turned around and immediately pointed to the second-story balcony and said, "I want to go there." And not just the general balcony, the left side of the balcony, which was the side of the hallway where the director said she saw the apparition of a woman. I was like, "Okay, you want to go there? How did you know that?" She's like, "No, what?" She's like, "I just want to go there. I feel like we should go there." I'm like, "Okay, let's go." So we head up to the second floor where the bar is, and we set up some equipment, some paranormal tripwire, which is basically just another form of EMF detection, just spread out in the form of a long wire so you can have a greater distance. And we performed an Estes session, which, for those who aren't familiar, it's basically one person puts on noise isolation headphones, and those headphones are plugged into a spirit box. It's basically just a radio that's scanning frequencies of AM and FM forward and backwards. You can control the rates. While the other person asks questions out loud, hoping that if a spirit is present, they can communicate through the radio waves. It also, the idea is to eliminate some personal bias. So we engage in this Estes session on the second-story balcony right in front of the bar where the glasses fall off. And my wife goes, she asks, is there anyone here who wants to talk to us?
Is there anyone here that wants to talk to us? Dolores.
And then I respond, Dolores. And then she continues to ask some more questions. And then I respond with, it's sad. Died. Listen. Sit still. 20s. She's in. And all those responses are kind of spread out over some time. I'm like, okay. I don't know what any of that means. We did get a female name. She tried to ask a little bit more about who Dolores was. Was she a performer there at the theater? Did she work there? We had gotten some Spanish responses. She tried speaking in Spanish, but nothing further progressed with that line of questioning.
Ashlie and her wife, Tatiana, then headed to another part of the theater and once again began another Estes session.
At one point, we had asked in another session, a line of questioning, how old are you? And we got the response, 60. And then my wife said, 60. So you're not a kid. Why are you here? And the response was, Louis, I think.
None of this meant anything to Ashlie at the time. She knew nothing about a Dolores, a Louis, or who was 60 years old.
I left kind of defeated, to be honest, the first time we went. I suppose it's worth mentioning, too, that first investigation, my name came through, which I had never had happen. When I was listening to the headphones in the Estes session, I heard my name, Ashlie. And I tore those headphones off so quickly because I felt so seen, right? Like when you're questioning and doing this stuff, you don't really think, oh, okay, I think it's really seeing me. I'm just saying what they're saying through the radio. But when they say something about you directly, this was the first time I had that happen. And it honestly really freaked me out. So that did happen the first time.
Once home, Ashlie hit the history books, trying to make some sense of the responses she received during the Estes method. Shockingly, her first discoveries were connected to the name Louis and the mysterious 60 years old.
And then I confirmed that Braxton Beacham died at 62. His father, Louis Beacham, also passed at 64. As I'm doing some more research on the theater, I did see that there are tunnels underneath the theater that connect it to two hotels. One is still standing today and the other was demolished. But basically, there are two tunnels underneath the Beacham Theater that connected across the street directly to the Angebilt Hotel, and then to the right, the San Juan Hotel, which was previously built in 1885, so a little bit before the theater. And actually, Braxton Beacham held offices in that hotel.
There are a lot of rumors connected to these tunnels. Some believe the tunnels were designed so the vaudeville performers could travel between the theater and the hotel without being swarmed by adoring fans. Some believe it was a matter of convenience, so Mr. Beacham could move easily and freely between his properties. And of course, some believe the tunnels were used for more nefarious purposes, like smuggling alcohol during Prohibition.
But those tunnels were blocked off during the demolition of the San Juan in around the 1980s. So they do have stopping points now and don't directly communicate. But during that time, Braxton Beacham was down in those tunnels, heading to his office, back and forth between the theater and the San Juan Hotel. So I found that out in post-research. Then, as I'm researching further, I find an article about a cyanide poisoning at the San Juan Hotel next door of Dolores Meyerly, a 19-year-old victim of a cyanide poisoning plot. I think my eyes were wide as saucers. I was just staring at the screen. Like, I texted my wife immediately. I was like, oh my gosh, Dolores, the name Dolores. Like, that just seems like it couldn't be a coincidence. So I did some further research on that murder. It occurred in 1938, and it really shook Orlando. It was a huge case in Orlando.
Now, I want you to settle in for this story, because the death of Dolores Meyerly is one of the most bizarre true crime cases we have ever covered on the West London Witch. Imagine this story in black and white, a film noir starring Greta Garbo and Buster Fairbanks, if you will. The year is 1938, February 16th. It's a cool, crisp evening, and a gentleman named Robert Etty is posted up at the bar top at the Jack Holloway's Friendly Bar, down the street from the San Juan Hotel. Etty was a mild-mannered man, a painter in his 40s, characterized as soft-spoken and sincere. Yet as he is sipping on his drink at old Jack Holloway's, he makes a new acquaintance.
He said a gentleman came up to him, and they got to talking, and the guy was like, oh, I don't drink whiskey. Here, take this. I'm a beer guy. So he was just handed this bottle of whiskey from a stranger he met at the bar.
Moments later, a young, beautiful Dolores saddles up next to Etty at the bar. She's 19, fresh-faced, chestnut hair, sparkly-eyed, and flirty. It's not long before Dolores invites 40-year-old Robert Etty back to her room at the San Juan Hotel. Once up in room 208, Dolores discovers the bottle of whiskey in Etty's pocket. She pours them both a dram and then takes a sip. However, as soon as the whiskey hits her lips, she looks up at Etty, wide-eyed and worried. Confused, she asked, "What in the world did you put in this stuff?" And then she proceeded to collapse, lifeless, on the hotel floor.
Etty called the doctor immediately. The doctor, Dr. McEwen, showed up, but it was too late. It was just, there was nothing that he could do. The autopsy revealed that the cause of death was cyanide poisoning. There were 14 grains of cyanide, enough to kill 3 adults.
Etty proclaimed his innocence. He had no idea what had happened. He had told the sheriff about the mystery man and the gifted whiskey. But surely the police were rolling their eyes at such a fantastical and convenient story.
It sounded made up, right? Until the doorman at the bar corroborated his story. He said he remembered Etty chatting with a man who complained of denture trouble. The guy who handed him the bottle complained of denture trouble, and the doorman saw this. Etty said he would remember the guy if he saw him again. And the sheriff did his job and basically went to the local dentist and said, "Have you had anyone in complaining of pain?" And he pointed to Donald Long, who was also confirmed by Etty to be the man who gave him the bottle.
Confronted by the sheriff, Donald Long denied the story. He protested that not only had he never met Etty, he wasn't at Jack Holloway's that night, and he had never even purchased cyanide. Unfortunately for Donald Long, the paper trail told a different story.
Sheriff Fields discovered the cyanide. It's purchased from McElroy's pharmacy by a chiropractor named Sykes. When the sheriff questioned Sykes, he admitted to buying the poison at Donald Long's request, who said it was for an insecticide business opportunity. So Long had Dr. Sykes buy the cyanide, proposing a business venture. That was the current story.
Now, here's where the story gets really bizarre. Because this supposed business opportunity was connected to a man named George Costin.
Costin was a previous lieutenant in the Orlando Police Department, and in recent years he had opened a private security firm. Costin claimed he was helping Long navigate the investigation, giving him some friendly advice and just kind of being a nice guy. But Sheriff Fields was like, why is this guy Costin inserting himself in Long's defense? And he questioned the chiropractor again who bought the cyanide, who finally said, yeah, I actually bought it for Costin. It turns out Costin was a crooked cop. His security firm was a whole front. He was building a criminal syndicate, hiring a slew of ex-cons coerced into committing robberies.
Sheriff Fields was floored. This twisted web of corruption and collusion felt like something from a Hitchcock film or a Conan Doyle novel. But how was Donald Long, the mysterious whiskey man, involved?
Costin tried to hire Long and his cousin Mosley, but neither of them wanted to participate in his scheme. And Mosley wound up getting arrested for something else, so he was out of the picture, but Long was still running around, so Costin wanted to tie up loose ends. And that's why he put the cyanide in this whiskey and gave it to Long, hoping that he'd just get rid of this guy who could, snitch on him, basically.
Costin was so worried Long was going to blow the lid on his criminal enterprise, he drugged the whiskey and waited for Long to take a sip. Therefore, the threat of Long's knowledge would be neutralized.
But Long didn't drink whiskey and just wound up randomly giving it to this guy he met at a bar saying, here, take this. I drink beer.
Dolores was never the target. Poor Robert Etty had nothing to do with her untimely demise, and Costin was caught. This case was so tragic, strange, and complicated, it became huge news in Orlando. But who was going to pay for Dolores' death? In a stunning move, the prosecution charged Costin with the murder, even though he was nowhere near the scene of the crime and had never intended to kill Dolores. But he had intended to kill. The prosecution introduced the idea of transferred intent, and the jury agreed.
He was originally sentenced to death, but eventually got life in prison, and he is buried in Orlando's Greenwood Cemetery today.
Ashlie was amazed that the name Dolores had come through the spirit box and was actually connected to the building. There was historical proof to back her paranormal findings.
I was like, Dolores obviously wants her story told. We got to come back. We got to see what's going on here. And I dug into Dolores as much as I could. Funny enough, all the paper, the photos in the newspaper were just of the men, just of the case. I couldn't find a photo of her. I did find her obituary. I did find her family's census records. She was originally from Tulsa, Oklahoma. She was born to a Syrian family, but born in Oklahoma. She was buried in Rose Hill Cemetery back in Tulsa. And she was originally living with her sister in Jacksonville. I don't know why they separated. I don't know why she came down to Orlando. I did listen to an oral interview that was preserved by Orlando Memory of Dr. McEwen's account finding her body.
Night of February 16th, 1938.
I remember the night well, but I don't remember the date. I received a telephone call about 12:30 from Harry Waters, who was the night clerk at the San Juan Hotel where I'd formerly lived, and so they still gave me the business down there. I'll have to admit that most people they called me for never could pay their bills and were transients. And I went down there, and Harry Waters sent me up to room you have there,
208.
208. And I knocked on the door, and a man who was rushed to the door to let me in, and there was a beautiful-looking brunette who was lying on the floor, gasping and unconscious, who had a white slip on, and her dress was off. When I went in the room, I was trying to size up what the good-looking girl was doing with a sort of a elderly man there. I suppose he must have been all of 40. At that time he seemed very old.
Yeah.
So I immediately examined the patient and found that she died in a few minutes after I got there. There was nothing I could do. And I questioned what had happened, and he told me that he had picked up this girl earlier in the evening, and she told him to come to her hotel room at such and such a time. And before he came over there, he'd been drinking, had some whiskey over at the bar across the street, while he was drinking there, a young fellow that he knew but he didn't know his name came up to him and was drinking beer, and he said, "Here, you're drinking whiskey." He says, somebody gave me a little miniature bottle, and he says, "Here, you take it, I'm not drinking whiskey." So he said he put it in my pocket, and he said I didn't think anything more about it until I got up in the room, and this girl started loving me up, and felt this little bottle in my pocket. So she says, "What do you got here?" And she pulled out this whiskey and said, "Let me have a drink." So she went over to the basin and put a little in a glass, about half of the bottle in the glass, and put a little water in it and drank it. Put down the glass and walked halfway across the room and fell unconscious.
But it was interesting because I was trying to find out, like, why was she in Orlando alone? Like, did she have dreams? You know, her life was cut so short, 19 years old.
Ashlie knew a lot about Dolores's death, but she wanted more answers about her life, her family, her goals, and why she was still at the Beacham Theatre. Did Dolores have a message she wanted to share?
I was invited back for a second investigation. A couple months later, I was armed and ready with all my research, all my pictures, and the obituary, the census records, the picture of the San Juan Hotel. And this time we both went under Estes, but I had my wife was under listening, and I was asking questions out loud, trying to make contact with Dolores in our round 2 investigation. It was very different than I thought it would be. I mean, I had my heart set on her coming back and talking to me and getting the story across that she wanted to convey, right?
So another Estes session begins. Tatiana is blindfolded with headphones on, and Ashlie is asking the questions.
I started asking, is anyone here with us? Is Dolores here with us? I held up a picture. This is the San Juan Hotel. You were staying here, right? Are you the woman that is seen walking in the hallway here? We didn't get too much, except during that line of questioning, I stopped at a certain point and I got really, really, really cold. And I held my arm up to the camera and you could see my hair standing on end, and the tripwire goes off. And then to my left, on the flat bar top, the cat ball lights up. So all these things just started happening in this little pocket of activity when I'm talking about a woman's presence upstairs. And then my wife responds, "Just look at her," which was strange. All of that together happening. Just look at her. And then I think I asked, look at who? Look where? And then I didn't get any response after that. And then there's a big pause. And then my wife says, "Amy." And Amy is the name of the Beacham's director, the woman who saw the apparition of a woman walk by her office. So this was an acknowledgement of an employee who worked there. And also, my name came through again in the second investigation too, named just Ashlie as soon as I sat down. Pretty much Ashlie.
Whoever was coming through during the Estes session was obviously intelligent and aware of the people who are now connected to the theater.
Even though I didn't hear maybe directly from Dolores or get any tidbits from anything she may want to say or her story, some activity did occur when I was asking about a female presence on the second floor in the same spot we were before when Dolores came through. That just goes to show, you can't control what comes through on paranormal investigations. You can try your hardest, but who really knows what it is still, right? Like, who knows what's happening? Was it like an imprint from the time period? Like was I overhearing something from back then? It must have been a big sensational story. Was someone saying her name back then? Then I was just hearing an echo of this? Or was it someone intelligent saying her name? Was it her saying her name? I don't know. But that name did come through, and that seems like too much to be a coincidence. In the second investigation, we also explored the underground tunnels. So they are there. They do exist. They are blocked off and caved in at certain points, but they're there. The green dressing room, we finally got to explore that to the side of the stage. It's up yellow spiral staircase at the very top. It's a tiny little brick dressing room. And we performed an Estes session up there. And when we asked, who's here with us? Can you give us a name? I responded, Stuart. And my wife said, Stuart, is that a first name, a last name? A last name, right? And then I said, I'm Chris. And then she said, Chris. Are you Chris Stewart? And then I said, I still wait. I still like.
Once again, that meant absolutely nothing to Ashlie or Tatiana. And Ashlie had not come upon those names while researching the building. Was it just mumbo jumbo from the spirit box?
Contacted the director of the Beacham and asked, do these names mean anything to you? Because I have no idea what Chris or Stuart would mean. And she said that there was an employee of the Beacham named Chris Stewart who used to work there. And I said, can I have Chris's contact information? And she said, sure. So I reached out to Chris Stewart, who confirmed that he used to be a manager there, and he spent many nights alone working long hours at the Beacham in the second story offices. So, Stuart, I'm Chris. I still wait. I still like it just sounded like something was maybe wanting to talk to Chris.
I like to think that this is further confirmation that whatever or whoever is still roaming the halls of the Beacham is just existing alongside the current employees, living their lives parallel to one another. Both the living and the dead have moments of fleeting awareness of each other's existence. But what does Ashlie make of the Beacham? Is it haunted? Is this a case of residual energy? Is Dolores trying to reach out?
I think it could be. I think there could be various things coming through that are intelligent. I think maybe it interchanges with something that's being caught from a different time or past time, almost like listening to a scene from a past time or something that happened, like a blip of that you're hearing. Ultimately, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it was directly Dolores or something like that. I don't know. I'm not sure.
What I love about Ashley's work is that it's the beautiful intersection of hauntings and history. I appreciate the time, diligence, and energy Ashlie puts into researching the locations she investigates. Fortunately for us, Ashlie has just written her first book, Beyond the Legend, Paranormal Paths to Hidden History, recounting all of her research and ghostly adventures. Join us on Instagram and Facebook for all of the updates to follow. And a huge thank you to Ashlie, the ghost story girl, for sharing this story with us. I, for one, can't wait to add your book to my home library. Do you have a spooky story you'd like to share? I'd love to hear it. Drop me an email at thewestlondonwitch@gmail.com or find us on Instagram and Facebook at The West London Witch. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. And come and follow us for additional content on Instagram and Facebook. Until next time, merry meet, merry part, and merry meet again. The West London Witch is created by me, Rebecca Strazina. Our sound designer and production magician is the incredible Danny Cross. Our theme music was bespokely written and performed by the wickedly talented Kyle Hall. Our cover art is the beautiful collaboration between Lizzie Wilson and Jake Bowser. Special thanks to Miss Sinead Bowers, our quality control and biggest cheerleader. And thank you to you, all of our listeners all over the world. These are your stories. Thank you for sharing them with us.